get ambushed and we see that guy who get a milkshake poured on his head in the food court at the mall because he pissed her off last Thursday, but she's letting him know Saturday afternoon in front of everybody that she's upset with him.
Right. Like you would hate for the argument to come out because I know my wife is really, really close with her parents.
Uh-huh.
And so my huge thing is like I don't want to have a debate in front of our parents.
Yeah.
So that they can weigh in on it. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I agree with Nick. Or,
Yeah.
Josh, you were for that. You don't want that. You gotta, yeah, time is everything. I love this diagram. It's really
Good.
great.
Good. Well, you're gonna like this next one now. So this, to our point about triggers, this is what I call the wind up. And so correct me if I'm wrong, because I know I got a couple of educators in here. I think the terminology is, we call this a high reflective emotional response or something like that, where basically you can feel yourself getting triggered, but you recognize it for what it is, and you're able to choose how you respond to that activation, if you will.
Yeah.
I may be butchering the language, but essentially you guys get the point. So what this is what I learned in my evolution as a husband was just learning what my triggers were. But I also realized that, to your point, Nick, about the firing sequence, I realized that there is a moment where I can catch myself and put that safety back on so that we actually don't have an ignition. So let's take I'll give you an example. Let's say, Nick, you and I are walking, let's say we're trick or treating or whatever. We're walking down the sidewalk, just left the house or whatever, and somebody jumps out of a tree and says, "Boo, gotcha," and everything. You're gonna like. There's so many primal responses that are gonna happen. You're gonna have a jolt. You're gonna jump back, or you may lock up for a minute, or you may yell or make an unintelligible noise or something like that. It's not something you have to think about. It's just something that automatically happened, right?
Right.
That can happen in a nanosecond, but about a second and a half later, you realize that it's Corey who jumped out the tree, and he pulls his mask off. And he's like, "Hey, I got you." And then you're like, "Oh, okay." Now you have another piece of information. You realize that it's not a threat, right?
Right. Right.
And so the same thing happens with us in arguments. We have this thing that I call the wind up, which is there are these little triggers, these little cues that we have that if we recognize them within ourselves, we can keep ourselves in a neutral posture, stay engaged without losing control, and keep our composure so that we can have tough discussions and get the information that we need and resolve the issue instead of just causing collateral damage, which is what most of us end up doing. So the first step on here is like, how many of you guys have been um, sitting on the couch, let's say watching the game, and maybe your wife is walking through and she'll be like, let's say it's Sunday and you watching the doubleheader. Second game starts and she walks by and be like, "Oh, you watching another game?" And she says it a little slick and it kind of catches your attention. You kind of like, hold up, what'd she say?
What's going on?
I'm now on guard. And then if you say, "Well, what'd you say?" And then she's like, "Well, you heard what I said." Oh, okay. Now I feel like doing something. Now I feel like I need to respond to what she said. So either I'm going to ignore her, which is a choice, and just pretend I didn't hear that, or I'm going to say something slick back, right? But then after I decide that I'm going to do something, well, what is my intent? Am I going to say something to? Am I looking for a flesh wound, or am I looking for the kill shot? And then from there, there's a moment where you catch yourself like, what is my last thought before I actually let this go or I take this action? So I have this diagram like a baseball pitcher. And so you look at a baseball pitcher, when he's on the mound, he's in a neutral position, right? He's on guard, so he's got the ball up. The next thing is he cocks that leg back. Now he's loading, right? Now, once he's loaded up, he's getting ready to take aim
Getting ready.
and getting ready to launch. Well, once he takes that step, now the process is in motion. And this is at the last point that he can pull that pitch back if he decides that that slider he was going to throw isn't a good choice. Or if the batter steps out of the box and is no longer in play, he can pull back, right? But once he leans forward and launches that arm forward, he can, all that energy he built up, he can no longer take it back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So that's that slick comment, you know, about her mama at Thanksgiving, talking about her biscuits is trash. You know, or you say, well, that's why your daddy ain't here, you know, because of y'all, you know, y'all run all the good men off in your family, you know, something, you know, something destructive like that. If we recognize what this looks like within ourselves, then whenever we hear our wives, if they're not in their best moment, they're trying to get a response out of us, we can manage our response to them in a healthy manner and keep ourselves in the game. Because if she's out of order, it doesn't make sense for us to be out of order with them, right?
That's true.
Because the only
I
thing,
think one thing.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was gonna say the only thing worse than one tornado was two tornadoes, right? And so that's
True. Like what I've heard was that when it comes to like arguments, you want to make sure that you are responding and not reacting.
yes. Mhm. Yeah. And so when you're reacting to something, that's all based on your feelings. So if your tone and delivery makes me feel like you're being condescending, there's no way I can respond because there's no data, there's no information, there's no facts that I'm reacting off of. What I'm reacting off of is tone and volume, you know, and my own personal triggers. So yeah, it makes sense to be able to understand the difference between those two. But one of the things that I found most helpful is understanding this wind up process and what it looks like inside of me. And so this may look like something different inside everybody. So as I alluded to earlier, you know, for me, when I get ready to lock up, I feel this, like you have different physiological responses. Like you may have increased blood pressure, you may have perspiration, you may have, you know, rapid heartbeat, you may have muscle contractions, you know, somebody's eye might be twitching or whatever. There's some sort of response. Your body's giving you a cue that we are now outside of our normal operating uh, threshold. Excuse me. And so when you understand what this looks like inside of you, then you can manage this in a position. I mean, you can manage this in a way that next time you have a tough argument, you'll be more effective in communicating with your wife and not taking the bait when she's sitting up there trying to needle you, trying to get a response out of you. Be like, I'm not taking the bait. Like, yeah, yeah, you missed that one here. You can be like the Matrix, you know, flow underneath that stuff, right?
Exactly.
And that keeps you in the game. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Good. Okay. So this next exercise we're going to do, we'll run through this real quick because there's like two more topics I want to get through before we wrap up. How many of you guys, show of hands, you have your image or your magazine cover?
Oh, yeah.
Don't show it. Just no. I just mean if you have something, some sort of image that you can look at. Whether it be a magazine, a book cover, CD cover, DVD cover, something. It could even be something in your room, something that you could hold up at the end of this exercise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick two volunteers, and we're going to do this exercise. So can I get two volunteers? I'm going to get one person that's going to draw, and then I got another person that's going to be communicating. So who wants to be my drawer? All right, Haskins, you're going to put your pens to work. Okay, and then I need somebody who's going to be a communicator. Anybody want to jump in? Okay, voluntold. All right, I got Chris and Haskins. Okay, so this is where you're going to get your other piece of poster board. The rest of you guys, you can just sit back and watch.